Okay, great. Thank you. But I just wanted to welcome everybody to the first virtual budget hearing in Edelweiss. Again, I've been here for 35 years and I've always been in person. But because of the pandemic, we are forced into a virtual situation. At least we have the resources and technology to be able to do this. First, I want to just preface, and this meeting is going to be one such that we simply are going to present to you, the Board of Commissioners, the proposed budgets as well as the warrant articles. We will be opening up for questions at the end of the presentation. And I want to remind everybody that if you don't have a question readily available at the end of this meeting, you can certainly email the office your question, or you can simply write it on a piece of paper, leave it in the mailbox. However you want to communicate, either by phone call, that's as well. We take that. But I also want to remind everybody that this meeting needs to be cordial. We're all good neighbors. What we're trying to do is operate the village in the most efficient and effective manner, and that starts with respect for one another. So I want to show you here on the slide. We got again the three of us. Again, my name is Jay Buckley. I'm the chairperson. This year, I want to jump down to Second Commissioner Kathy Kozel. And her
Donna's going to slide over here.
Okay, so, it is Kathy.
I'll just
wave Kathy, thank you.
Yep.
And her term expires next March. And we also have Paula Doyle. Paula, could be waved. Thank you, Paula. Paula was appointed this year when Commissioner Adam Weiser resigned. And I want to thank Paula for putting up with the other commissioners and the work that's involved. It's been a lot of work, and I really appreciate you stepping in. Paula's got a great amount of experience. She actually played a big role and spent a lot of time going to meetings all of last year, never expecting to be a commissioner this year. But boy, all that experience and that time that you put in last year certainly paid off, and I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, can we jump to the next slide?
Okay. So maybe I'll step in here for a second.
Okay, Kathy.
So Donna and I can play musical chairs here.
You stay on that. Okay, I don't need to be in that.
So we just thought that we would start this meeting by just giving a quick overview of one of the biggest projects that has occurred within the district in all of, I think, Jay's time in the district anyway. We did get approval from the voters in the amount of $869,400 to build a new storage tank on the top of Reinark. And originally the tank was going to be a 90,000 gallon tank, but the cost to go up to $120,000 tank just seemed to make more sense. I mean, we're getting much bigger bang for our buck by doing that. So this is a current picture of the pump house. The tank's been completed. The pump house is almost done. As the bullet points show, we did end up with a 120,000 gallon tank, a pump house, and a brand new pressure zone. There was probably 20 people at the top of Reinark that, even though they were close to the prior tanks, there was no pressure there, and it was substantially lower than even the state requirements. So DES was extremely instrumental in helping us push this whole process forward to take care of those individuals. And part of that was actually putting in 4,400 feet of a brand new water main from that pump house to feed those homes up on the top of Reinark. In the process of doing that, we were also able to move 3 bleeders. And bleeders are valves that we turn on in the fall and leave running all winter in order to keep the water moving, which will prevent it from freezing. And another thing that DES frowns on, and it's been our contact, Rick Skarenka's pet peeve for numerous years, to start getting rid of these bleeders. So 3 of them were removed in the process of putting in the new pump house and the new water main. And in addition to all of this, we did get a new overlay of pavement on Briston, Stock, and Aspen. So after the construction was done of digging up the road and putting in the new water mains, it didn't make sense to just try to patch and repair the road. So what Kelly helped us do is figure out a way to get that whole section repaved. So it did come out of the warrant article, and it did get okayed by the gentleman at DES. So that's basically where we stand now. And how this all came to be was, very quickly, the whole project ended up being $1,249,400. And the funding was $869,400 was the loan that the voters authorized the district to take. We applied for and received a $295,000 grant from DES, and part of that grant was to spend down $85,000 of our capital reserves. So if we spent the $869,400 from the loan and the $85,000 in our capital reserves that existed at that time, that would have given us the $295,000 from the state to apply to this project. And how that was broken down by contract was that the DN tank portion, which was the actual construction of the tank, $388,800. Dawson's, who was really the site contractor, they did all the excavating for the tank. They put in all the water lines. They built the pump houses. They are doing a lot of the grading and such up at the top of Reinhardt. So their contract was the 671,776. The next two lines are engineering. The first one was the actual engineering of the project itself. And then the second portion of it is their construction and management oversight and providing us with the LiDAR maps and the owner's manual and the as-built drawings once this process is through. And with those things, we still ended up with $149,000, 124 in a contingency fund. So those two things kind of equal the 120, the 1,249,000. So where we are right now is we just broke out the contract price, which came from the previous slide, the funds that were spent against those contracts, which were in the second column, and the balance of those contracts. We've spent $1,095,416 so far. $29,887 actually came out of our general budget. The grant we've received $256,170 so far because we get it prorated. So for every $100,000 we spend, we get 25% of that back from the grant. So what's actually been applied to the warrant article, which was approved at $869,400, is $809,359. So we still have a little ways to go to complete the project. As you can see, the balance, there's still some monies there left over to complete what's left on this project. Okay. And then one of the questions that came up a couple of times during the past few months is what's left to do on the project? Because of COVID, there was a couple of pumps and a transfer switch that was unavailable. It was on back order. You couldn't find it anywhere in the country. So that prompted the winter shutdown. So since then, those items have been received. They've been installed. I believe there was a plumber or an electrician actually up at the pump house today doing some additional work up there. Operations manual is being completed. Once spring sets in and the roads they got unposted Monday, correct?
Monday.
So the guys should come in fairly soon, hook up those 19 new properties to the new water main, and get the roads restored back to the pre-project condition. Then the tank, which was filled, has to be drained, cleaned, and refilled since the winter. And then they'll go about decommissioning the old tanks and destroy the old pump house and do a walkthrough to make sure that we take care of any punch list items that are left over. The nice thing is that there will probably be some funds left over after all the above has been said and done. The upper Lakeview pressure zone, there's been a consistent problem with pressure up there. Some houses are way too high and ones right below it are way too low. So they're trying to separate that zone up there. And the original thought was about a $25,000 fix with a PRV pit. But looking at it with the engineer and our water operator, it seems that may be a short-sighted fix. And we may need to do some additional work up there, and that can come out of that contingency fund. And then after all that is done, there's been 11 alternative projects that have been somewhat engineered that are available to use up the rest of those funds. So depending on what the urgency is, how much money we have left over, what input we get from our water operator, from our engineers, will determine which of those 11 projects we're able to complete. And they have to be completed by the October timeframe in order for us to continue getting those projects reimbursed through the grant, the 25% grant. Yes, Jay?
Yeah, so just one thing to add to what you just mentioned with the additive alternative projects. We were notified recently by New Hampshire DES that there may be some serious stimulus money coming to the state of New Hampshire from the federal government as part of the stimulus package, and that we should be prepared if any of this money does come for water systems to basically be able to jump on some of this money and get some more upgrades to our system. So as Kathy mentioned, there are several additive alternatives, and those are basically other projects which were designed or developed, and they're just basically shovel ready if the stimulus money does come along. So you may see the commissioners scrambling, try to get a piece of that if it does come down from the federal government. Sorry, Kathy, go ahead.
Okay. So what monies we have left, and then again, if there's any stimulus money, one of the conditions was having shovel-ready projects. So we have 11 projects here, and obviously we don't have the current funding to do all of them. At least they've been looked at and designed and are ready to go if we get the money available to us. That is very true, Jay. Okay. All right. So I will turn the microphone over to Paula.
Okay, I have people emailing that they're blocked, but I don't have anybody in the room to have them join.
Give us the whole. If you folks could just hold on 1 second, we want to make sure we can get in as many people as we are trying to get in. Waiting. Okay, there's one.
Okay, you got that person?
Okay.
Yeah.
And who just joined the meeting? Hi, Dorothy.
Hi, Dorothy.
Dorothy Wendolowski.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you want to wait a second to see if anybody else.
I'm just going to email the person that emailed me.
Okay, so hold on 1 second, folks.
We should let Paula ask for everyone to at least give their name so she can record that in the minutes.
It comes at Jay. I'm writing them down.
You are? Okay.
Yeah, so we'll have the list to add to the heading on the minutes of the meeting.
All right.
Okay. Are you able to add people if I keep going?
Yeah.
I don't know, because you have control of the thing, to tell you the truth, Paula.
Well, we did add just one person came in from the lobby. So
yeah.
We did. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to keep going. Now we're going to go into the budget. So for anyone who just joined, I think, Dorothy, all we've gone through so far is a review Kathy did of the Rhinebeck tank project, kind of what we've done, what still needs to be done, and kind of the accounting for that. So we're happy to, review that with you at another time if you have any questions on that or questions at the end.
Yeah. And Paula,
yes.
we did post on the website this exact presentation. So if somebody wants to go back and review what we've talked about and those bullet points, this presentation is posted on the website.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the first thing I'm going to just start talking in general terms is about the proposed operations budget for the district for this year. We're proposing $564,695, and Kathy will go through more detail in a couple slides, but this is just an overview, and this is a little bit, it's less than 1% higher than what was approved for 2020, which was $567.40. And there are some significant, somewhat significant new expenses for 2021 we just wanted to highlight on this slide. The Rhinebeck tank, which Kathy's just gone through, we have a payment due this year of $76,630, but we actually have already raised $59,142 for what was called the first year's payment, but that didn't occur until this year because of I think for the delay in the project. So we have to raise an incremental $17,500 to make that payment this year. Also, we bought a new truck, so that's $11,500. And then the other thing we just wanted to make people aware of is the healthcare plan, the benefits. There are some other increases in employee-related costs that you'll see in detail, but we made a decision this year to add a family plan option for our employees who might need it. So, and that is an incremental $6,000. And one of our employees has opted into that plan, and the other one who's on benefits did not. So that'll increase that line item. And just for people who might be newer, who doesn't understand how the budget works, this budget plus the warrant articles that are funded by taxation are really the numbers that drive the tax rate for 2021. And the thing we wanted to make you aware of is the tax rate for this year. And at the very end of the presentation, we'll talk a little bit more about the tax rate. But the tax rate may also be affected to our benefit a little by an error that was made by the DRA in 2020. So what happened last year was that when we're done with the annual meeting, we provide via a portal all the information on what budgets were approved, which warrant articles were approved, which ones weren't approved. We report all that to the DRA, and they actually picked up something wrong. So there was a warrant article, and we put in that it was not approved because it wasn't, and they marked it as approved. And so they actually set our tax rate too high, assuming that we had to raise $30,000 for a specific warrant article that was not approved. So they are now trying to figure out how to fix this mistake that they made. And they're going to do probably one of two things. They're either going to lower the tax rate next year by $30,000, or they're going to move the funds to what's called unassigned fund balance, which I'm going to also give you some more detail on. But this does not affect our budget. I want to be very clear on this, that this is basically a cash flow issue. So what happened was, I'm going to make this a really broad example. Last year we approved $560,000 plus some warrant articles, but what they did is they raised $590,000. So they actually just collected $30,000 too much. But we are not authorized to spend that $30,000. We didn't add it to our budget. It's just money extra that was collected sitting in the bank. And so we can't spend it. We don't want to lower our budget. It's a cash flow mistake. So what they're going to do is, as I said, if we approve this year $564,000, assuming we approve this, they're going to go and raise $534,000. That's what we're hoping they do, that they just lower our tax rate so that we approve what we need and what you approve, but they won't have to raise it all because they raised some of it a little bit early. The other option is that they'll do this other accounting thing with it, and we can make some adjustments for the way we fund things if they do that. So it doesn't affect the budget, but if you've heard anything about this, we wanted to make people aware. The water budget we're proposing is $163,075, and this is versus this is actually about 4.5% lower than what we approved for last year, which was $170,915. And just one thing to point out is there was a 2018 water loan that was approved, and the first payment for that with principal and interest is due in 2021, and that's $17,200. So up until this time, we've only been paying interest, but now we need to start paying the principal. Just for a little background on that originally in 2018, a warrant article was approved for $204,920 that we were going to borrow to inspect and line all of the water tanks. And they started implementing that project. They spent $64,309. And what happened was the two tanks up at Rhinock were inspected, and instead of being able to reline them, we found out we had to replace them. And that's what's driven the project that Kathy described earlier. That Kathy went through earlier. So with the other money, with the $64,309, we had done that. We also inspected other tanks and relined as necessary. And that left, a bunch of money that had been approved. So the following year in 2019, what the board proposed was using most of those remaining funds for upgrades at 3 pump houses. There were 3 separate warrant articles funded to use the remaining money for a different project. And as it turns out, we ended up only spending $77,583. So in the end, of the original 204,920, we only spent 141,892. But as it turns out, it's not extra money that we have left over, because we just, instead of borrowing 204,920, we're just going to borrow 141,992. And the new payment of 17,200 that's due is due on the 141,892. I hope that's not too confusing, but we just wanted to kind of clarify where we were on that other big loan from 2 years ago. Okay. Kathy.
All right. So, Doug Prescott, who said, "What the heck is this spreadsheet all about?" This is the spreadsheet that the district has been using for an awful long time. And I think it was the result of trying to take a QuickBooks report, which was our profit and loss and our trial balance, and it's what the auditors use, and to take the numbers and put them into a format that made more sense to the voters. One of the unique things about this district is that we have two budgets. So QuickBooks has a hard time separating them in a report like this. The numbers are all correct, but they're all sort of in line with each other in the QuickBooks reports. So what we've always looked at is the operations budget, which is on the left-hand side of the spreadsheet. We've got the budget that was approved at the beginning of 2020, how much we actually expended in 2020, how much we're proposing for 2021 going forward, and then the difference from what we actually spent in 2020 compared to what we're asking for 2021. That's the blue column. And then the next four columns is the exact same information, but it's for our water budget. And the big difference there is that the operations and highway budgets are paid for by property taxes. So however much money we raise to support this budget comes from the taxes, and it affects the tax rate. The water budget, on the other hand, comes from a water fee. And the water fee in 2020 was $400 for the entire year. And this year we kept it at $400. So that bill just went out to all the property owners a couple of weeks ago. So everything in that center group of columns comes from and is paid for by the water fee. And then we've always combined the two together. And I'm thinking next year maybe not do that to give a little bit more room to the other columns, because I don't know how critical it is to see what those two budgets combined together add up to. But that's what that is. We've taken the total water budget and the operations budget, combined them together, both what was appropriated last year, what we actually spent, and what the proposal is, and then the difference from what we spent based on what we are asking for this year. So what I'd like to do is, and for those listening, if you've got questions on specific line items, we did number the lines in the budget. So if you've got a question on line 21, jot that down so that if you have to go back and look for it, we can find it easily. Or if you want to just send something into the office that you want more information about that line item, that you question it for whatever reason, just kind of refer to it by that line item number that's on the spreadsheet. So what I think I'll do is I'm going to go down. There's 3 pages to this. So I'm going to go down the operations side, page 1, 2, and 3, and then we can go back to the top and do 1, 2, and 3 for the water budget. And just basically give you the explanation for what each of the subtotals are versus going by each individual line item. And at the end of the meeting, if somebody has a question on a specific, line item 6, why do you have $2,775 spent in that line item, and you only have a required budget of $680 for this coming year? So if you've got a specific question, write it down, and if we can answer it tonight, we will. If not, we'll get it to you as soon as we get back in the office. Okay? So the first line item is the salaries, and that's for the 3 commissioners and for the treasurer, and that has stayed the same. We didn't spend all of it last year because there was a gap in the commissioner's position for almost a month. So that's why that we only spent a little less than the $12,200 that was appropriated. Our administrative numbers, the budget was approved for $46,443. We spent $39,230, and we're looking at coming in around $41,615 this upcoming year. We've made a few adjustments in this category. We added a new line, and it's line number right between 3 and 4. I guess I must have missed that when we're doing the numbering. So line 3.5, we're taking the QuickBooks consultant, and she was an ex-treasurer of Madison, so she's been helping us with some of the finances. So her pay, and also she's now taking over the processing of the payroll, the quarterlies, and our year-end statements. So those numbers we're getting added into line item 5 and 6. So we pulled them out of there, and they're now in their own separate category. So all the bookkeeping, accounting, and payroll expenses are all going to be in that one account versus broken up into printing dues and also equipment and maintenance is where some of that was. So so that's what we're looking at. Just, you know, we're looking at about $1,200 of incremental costs going forward in that category. The next line item is legal expenses. We budgeted $6,450. We spent $9,000. There was an inordinate amount of legal issues going on at the beginning of the year. We're confident that if we stay with the $6,450, that we will come well within that budget for this coming year. The employee benefits, this is where Paula alluded to a little bit. Medical insurance, we did offer the family plan for the employees, and one of those employees did take advantage of that. So although we budgeted $34,000 last year and spent $28,000, we're going to need the $39,600 this year in order to cover all those costs. And the other thing of note is on line 17 is that the New Hampshire retirement percentage of payroll went up substantially. So there was a fairly significant increase there as well. So with those two things, it's pushing our proposed amount for our employee benefits, which is our Social Security contributions, the workman's comp payments, and our unemployment insurance up proportionately, and that total will be $77,073. Now there is on line 16 there is a credit there, and that's something that the auditors are going to. I'm sorry, let's close that up. But the auditors are going to determine whether that's a credit to our 2020 expenses, or if that, because it was a check sent to us by Primex, because we had overpaid our unemployment insurance for a couple of years, and that money just kept accumulating. And at the beginning of 2020, we decided we wanted that money back, not for it to just be sitting in their bank account, that it should be in our bank account. So either it'll go into the unassigned fund, or some people feel that no, it should stay where it is, and we'll be using that as a credit toward future payments. So the auditors will get that squared away. All right. So the next category is general government and buildings. This is the DPW buildings. It's the DPW1, DPW2. We've got the office upstairs here. General maintenance on the buildings, the heating, the electricity, the phone systems. We did put a little money in there for engineering. If there's any projects coming up toward the end of this calendar year, we'll have some money to have it engineered so we can get actual costs for what those things might be. Our approved budget for 2020 was $29,260. We only spent $18,000, so we kind of split the difference and settled in at $27,350. All right, and then the last little item on this page is our property and liability insurance. So it went from $37,400, which I believe was the previous year. It's now $38,339, and then when we get our bill the middle of this year, it's going to be closer to $39,100. Okay. This next category is pretty straightforward. We break down our loans. We have the principal on the outstanding loans, and then the next section is the interest on those loans. So we've got the Oak Ridge, which was a road paving project. So we still owe on that. Jungfrau, that project, we paid the last payment on that. So there was expenses in 2020, but there will be no expenses in 2021. Okay, the greater lease is going to be the lease that we had last year, the same as this year. The new truck is the truck loan, and that was the $11,000 that Paula was referring to. So of that, $7,300 is the principal portion of that loan. On the Reinhardt tank, same thing. The $10,143 is the principal portion of that loan as well. And then the water tank loan, which was the $140,000 that we were only paying interest on, we're now paying principal on, and that's funded through the water budget. So it does not show up on the operations side. So that's where that $12,045 is if you kind of look over a couple more columns. So those two things stay pretty much the same. The principal that we're paying out, $73,965, and the interest on that same amount of payments is $17,927. So we really don't have a whole lot of control over that. Regional Association, there's a group called NHMA, the New Hampshire Municipal Association, which provides all kinds of guidance and seminars and legal advice to municipalities. We are a member of that. There's the Winnipesaukee Drug Consortium, which is a way of diluting drug testing for the drivers of commercial trucks. We belong to that. So those are some of the associations that we belong to. The next line item is miscellaneous training and checklist. And we do pay for the checklist women that come to our annual meeting and take care of the ballots and the voting and making sure that all of that is all set. So that's always been about $1,000 every year. All right, and then the next category is our highways and our streets, and that's where our 2 full-time and our part-time person, their payroll comes out of this category. So we've got our 2 full-time employees. We budgeted $98,000 last year. We came in at $97,799, so that was pretty close. We've got a little bit of an increase for this coming year, up to $99,000 between the 2 of them. The bonus line is the same as it was last year. $3,500 was budgeted. $3,500 is what we're asking for this year. Our part-time staff kept it the same, $18,000. There's an on-call comp benefit that the employees choose to be on call. Jeff's on call for 2 weeks, then Kelly's on call for 2 weeks. So they do get a stipend for that. And then our part-time person, and the overtime is certainly all the hours that they spend over and above their 40 hours a week, and that's primarily due to snow plowing. And we budgeted $13,700. We had a great year. We spent $11,959. So we're going to leave the budget the same at the $13,750. Equipment and maintenance. This is an interesting category. We budgeted $45,840, but we only spent $26,603, and we're asking for $32,000. And one of the reasons is that we, as Donna and Kelly were looking through invoices and making sure that we were posting them correctly, we were dumping almost everything into that one account, which is that line 49, the equipment repairs and maintenance. And a lot of that was stuff that really should have been under tools and equipment. So Donna was really aggressive about getting Kelly to be very specific on the invoices as to exactly what the hoses were for. Were they garden hoses or were they hydraulic hoses? And if they were hydraulic hoses, what piece of equipment did they go to? So we would just have a much better look at what's going on with that type of equipment and repairs. So the $45,800 was a little high, but if you look at the tools and equipment, we only budgeted $4,000 and spent $9,000. And that's just because we were just reallocating it to a different line item. And we spent $45,603, and we're looking at $48,000 for this upcoming year. All right, so there's not a whole lot of difference there. On the roads, the actual materials that are used to maintain our roads, which is sand, salt, culverts, gravel, etc., we're pretty much towing the line. We got approved for $18,000 last year in salt. It was a good year. We only spent $12,000, but we're asking for $15,000 to make sure that we're covered. Sand, $17,000. We spent $6,500. So we thought $8,000 was a pretty good number to stick to. Culverts, we were looking at $6,000. There's an awful lot of old metal culverts in the district. And we asked Kelly if he wanted more than $6,000. He said, no, $6,000 is a good number. If I can, get a good plan together and start really looking at those metal rusted culverts and start replacing them with the plastic ones. The gravel budget was $15,000. We spent $10,941, and we're asking for the $15,000 again this year. I think, Jay, was it the
Kelly
gravel?
got the seal.
I'm sorry.
Kelly got the deal with the.
No, okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things that happened on the gravel was Kelly got a call at 6 o'clock in the morning. The guy said, I've got an overstock of gravel. I'll work a deal for you. If you can get here, like in a moment's notice, I can swing you a really nice deal on some gravel. So that's why, even though we got $15,000 worth of gravel, it only cost us $10,941. Asphalt, pretty much the same. Budget 17, spent 16. We're going to budget 17 for this upcoming year. Engineering and consulting, $5,000. Again, if there's any kind of project that we want to present to the voters at the end of this year for next year's budget, we need to have some money available to send that out to engineers to get specifications and scope of work and a true estimate as to what some of those costs might be. So that's the engineering side of it. Dust control is that's we budgeted $2,200. We spent $5,000, but we also worked a program with Rock House Mountain, and their roads all funnel into our ponds, and they were having a lot of problems over there with erosion. So Kelly and the commissioners thought it would be to our best interest to support them, and we went over and the calcium chloride that we applied to their roads, and then they reimbursed us for that material. So even though we spent $5,000, we got back like another $2,300, which was reimbursed from Rock House Mountain. And then subcontract equipment, sometimes they've got to rent rollers and leaf blowers, etc. So that's what that line 62 is. So when you look at the approved budget from 2020, it was $83,200. We spent $56,518, but we're asking for $73,415. And a lot of that is that $5,000 for that gravel to make sure that we've got enough cash if we don't get a good deal on gravel for next year. All right, and this is a nice short slide. Street lighting, we get a separate bill from Eversource for our roadway street lighting. Parks and Recreation is money that we use for the beaches. And one of the things that Kelly did do was he found a contractor that was willing to clean our outhouses. And most of you that have been with us for the last couple of years know what a roundabout conversation we had about outhouses. We couldn't get anybody to clean them because they'd been stuffed with garbage and trash and pizza boxes and diapers, and we were actually going to resort to outhouses. And but Kelly was able to find somebody that was willing to create a device to get down in there and clean the outhouses. So we had them all clean, and it was over $3,500, I think, to do that. So going forward, we shouldn't have to spend that much money to have them come in and clean them. But we're not going to let them go for as long as they got let go over the last couple of years. The TAN interest is if we have to borrow money in anticipation of our tax check, but it seems that we've been keeping ahead of it, so we didn't budget anything for that. Okay. So that is the highway and operations budget. So at the bottom part here, you can see that the total was that $560,740 that did get approved last year. We spent $482,476, and we're asking this year for $564,695. Okay. So if we want to go to the top quickly, it won't take quite as long to go through the water side of it. And again, for those that aren't used to working with this double budget spreadsheet, most of the administrative stuff at the top, and I'm not even going to take any time to go over it line by line, is whatever costs there are in running the office, which is the administrative costs, electrical costs. When we send out bills, we prorate 15% of those expenses toward the water budget, since the administrative group does do quite a bit to help support the Ian Hayes, which is our water operator, and any of the costs associated with collecting the water fees and sending out email correspondence and all of that. So that's kind of what that whole top group is. It's a percentage of what happens in the overall gets allocated to the water budget. And the same thing with the part-time employees under the employee benefits. None of the, actually I skipped a line. Let me go back to line 12. So on line 12, we did have some legal expenses last year. So I just wanted to explain that. So we only budgeted $750 for legal last year, and we ended up spending almost $7,000. And that was a known expense by the commissioners, because in order to get municipal financing for the Reinhardt tank and get us that extremely low interest rate, we had to hire an attorney to prepare the application and get that loan approved for us. So we knew it was going to cost $7,000 to $10,000. We put it under the water budget because it was securing a loan for the water tank. So that was definitely a one-time expense. So we left the $750 that was appropriated in 2021, since that, that $6,000 was definitely a one-time thing. Okay. Under the employee benefits, we take a portion of the administrative salaries and expense that to the water budget. We don't do that for Kelly and Jeff on the roads and maintenance, because they really don't do much. They don't overlap the water system that much. General government and buildings, that category, we prorate the electric bills and some of the costs of both DPW1 and DPW2, since down below the office here is the chemical room, which is used to prepare the water, and that's under the water system. And then in DPW2, the building on Idlewice Drive, they use a portion of that building for storage. So some of the costs of maintaining and running these two buildings gets assigned to the water budget. And the same thing with insurance. We take 15% of our overall property and liability insurance, and we prorate that to the water budget. Okay. And this is back to our loans and our interest. There's the line number 28 is zero, because that was the last payment for the Jungfrau loan, which we paid earlier in 2020. So there is nothing for this coming year. And the $12,485 is now the principal portion of the loan from the monies that were used to inspect and line the water tanks, and then to finish the upgrades to the pump houses. There was nothing there previously, because that's now the loan that we're paying principal on that we were not previously paying. And then on the interest, it's just the same kind of, mirror image of the loans that we're paying and what the interest portion of that is. Okay. And then, so here's where all the water service expenses come in, is for the pump houses that are throughout the district. There's the electricity that goes into them to keeping them warm and running the pumps. There's testing for the water. There's repairs to the water system, which is the biggest chunk of this. We allocated $50,000 for 2020. We spent $40,000. We split the difference and ended up with a $45,000 amount for the year upcoming. That's always a hard one to nail down, since you really don't know what's going to happen. But that $45,000 seems like it's pretty realistic for the rest of this year. Water treatment, which goes into treating the water, engineering. Again, for any water system projects, we lowered that from $15,000 down to $7,500. Water monitoring is Ian's contract. As our water operator. We have a contract with him so that he is accountable to the state and to us for the quality of our water. And because of his water operator status, there is a cost to having him be our water operator. And he comes to the meetings and he answers questions, and he's on site doing a bunch of things too. So it's more than just a contract for his license. Heat and propane, and then the SCADA system is the electronic system that communicates from the pump houses back here to the office. So we know if the tanks are too full or too low, if the power is out, if the pumps are over pumping. So it's just an electronic system that monitors what's going on in the pump houses, so that when there is a failure, the commissioners get notified as well as our water operator. And that budget, we're actually going down a little bit. We were appropriated $170,915. We spent $155,576, and we're proposing a budget for this upcoming year of $163,075. Okay. And on the bottom, we just stuck two little squares there. On the right side, small square is the other income that would offset some of our expenses. And one of them, we got $1,875 from Rockhouse Mountain on the dust control. And then there's some culverts that we installed on property owned driveways that we said, look, if you pay for the culverts, then we'll put the culvert in, and it's all within our right of way. So that was where the 950 came from. And on the left side is the warrant articles that were approved last year and how much money was spent against those warrant articles. So with that, Jay, do you have anything to add? No. Okay. All right. So the next slide, I'll turn it over to Paula.
Okay. So this slide just gives a quick overview of our capital reserve accounts. And capital reserve accounts are basically our savings accounts. I mean, these we may or may not, as we go through warrant articles, allocate some of these funds. But I just want to give you the current accounting of where we are on these, and you'll see in the warrant articles that there are some of these that we're going to try to refund this year because they're pretty low. The four at the bottom are the 4 water system funds, and those are, they all have healthy balances in them. We are likely going to spend $85,000 out of these because we can do, if we do that, we'll get the matching funds for the grant for the Rhinoc overview big project that Kathy reviewed at the beginning of the presentation. But as you can see, the rest of these, particularly highway equipment and highway equipment repair, are pretty much tapped out at this point. So usually the nice thing about these accounts is we want to be saving now for equipment we're going to need to buy in the future. So when we get into those warrant articles, you'll see our plans, our proposals to fund those top 2 capital reserves. The last thing is that I'm going to talk about is the unassigned fund balance. And the unassigned fund balance is really the money that accumulates over time that we don't spend, that we haven't spent, that's been allocated from the operating fund. And it's determined, it's sort of determined by at the end of the year. Once the audit is finished, they look at kind of, what was approved, what was raised, and what was spent. And any extra dollars move into the unassigned fund balance. And you want to have a balance here. This is really a good, it's important to have money on hand like this for emergencies. And even if we were to go over budget and unplanned, we would be able to tap into this with permission if we had to, only if we ran into a real problem. So it is important to have an unassigned fund balance, a healthy one. But ours at the end of 2019, according to our audit, was at $239,483, and we're anticipating some big additions for this year. First of all, we're anticipating having been under budget in 2020, and right now our estimate was 78,264 based on the detail Kathy just went through. The audit is being done right now, so that number may move a little bit, but that's roughly how much we anticipate being able to move for 2020 into that unassigned fund balance. We also raised some other funds from the driveway permit fees for new driveways, and also we had a boat auction where we auctioned off some of the boats that we had what's the word? I can't think of the word, but that we had found on the beaches. We raised several $100s last year, so that was a little over $3,000. And then we also just sold one of the old trucks. We just completed this sale 2 weeks ago. This is the truck that we kind of replaced with the new truck last year, but we didn't sell it last year. We wanted to keep it on hand, but the repairs were kind of starting to add up. So we decided to sell it, and we put it up for auction, and we sold it for $25,400. So all that revenue moves into the unassigned fund balance. So there will also probably be at the end of the audit some warrant article savings from last year, a little change here and there. So pending that final audit, plus for 2020, plus if you look at this truck contribution, we're expecting that the unassigned fund balance would probably be at about $350,000 right now, which is really more than we need. And also we raised, $78,000 in taxes more than we needed last year. So we'd like to spend some of that money. And as we go through the warrant articles, we're going to talk about our proposal for how to do that. Okay, Jay, you're up.
Yeah, just one thing I wanted to point out that Paula just went over, the difference between a capital reserve fund and the money that's in the unassigned fund balance. Capital reserve funds are specific funds for specific purposes. One of the ones that you pointed out was a highway equipment repair. which I think had about $1,700. You can only imagine if you had a radiator fail on the grader, the Caterpillar grader, sorry, the Volvo grader, $1,700 to replace that radiator for that big truck. So the purpose of the capital reserve funds is to have money available for specific purposes, and that's why they're named, for example, highway equipment repair. That's what you can use that money for, and that's all that you can use that money for in that fund. And it can be used by the commissioners at any time during the year it becomes necessary. The unassigned fund balance is more of a large savings account with no assignment to that money. The commissioners cannot spend that money in a given year unless it is approved by you, the voters. So that's the difference between those two types of funds. Capital reserve funds, right now, the way they're worded, have the commissioners as the agents to expend. The unassigned fund balance can only be expended at the permission of the voters. So that's basically the difference what Paula was getting to in regards to those two different types of funds and where they actually stand. I'm going to be talking about the warrant articles. The very first one is voting for officers. That's pretty simple. We have one commissioner who is up for grabs, and we do have one candidate that has submitted their name for that position. We have the position of treasurer. We also have one candidate that's put their name in for that, as well as a clerk, and I don't think we have anybody that has applied for that position. So if we can move on to the next slide.
We have one person.
Page 15.
Okay.
Yeah, we did get, there was one person.
Oh, we did, okay.
Into their application.
All right.
Next slide.
Oh, I'm
Can
sorry.
you go to the next page, Paula?
Yep.
All right. So this is article number 2, and this is again what Kathy just elaborated on in great detail, and that's the operations and highway budget. To see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $564,695 for the general municipal operations. This article does not include appropriations contained in any special or individual articles addressed separately. Funding for this appropriation is raised through taxation. And if we can jump to the next slide, this is the water budget. Again, Kathy had given the details on the two different budgets. This amount, $163,075, is for the general water system operation. Funding for this appropriation will be raised by water usage fees, which have already been set and sent out to you for this year at a rate of $400 for this entire year. Okay. Next article is article number 4. The paving of Chicora View Drive. It's actually a little more than the paving of Chicora View Drive. It's actually the reconstruction of that road. We're going to reclaim the entire road, which means we're going to grind up the pavement that is in place right down to the base of the road, build up the base of the road, reestablish the culverts and the drainage on the sides, and then put down a 2-inch coarse base layer of asphalt. And a few years after that base layer is applied, we'll be putting down what is called the wear coat or the top coat. And the cost for the reclamation and the 2-inch base coat for this year is $37,100. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is article number 5, the brush and tree cutting. So as many of you may have seen, some of our roads are quite narrow and trees tend to cause our plow personnel some difficulties, and the plows sometimes hit those trees. Well, those trees are actually too close to the road and need to be removed. In years past, we've actually had contractors come in with all different types of apparatus, machines called brush hogs. We've had sickle bars. We've had deck mowers, And they basically keep the brush along the sides of the road at bay. And it's the brush that actually causes some of the drainage issues that we have, because they tend to collect leaves and other debris around them. And sometimes that reroutes some of the water flow. So we want to get back into maintaining the maintenance of keeping brush and trees outside of the right-of-way of our roads so that we can plow them properly and have good drainage as well. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is article number 6. To see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 for their surveying and revisions to the property lot lines in anticipation of a property sale in the future. And this is in regards to the lodge property at the top of Oak Hill. And I think most everyone has probably been to the lodge at one point or another, whether it be for an event with the EPOA or with the Board of Commissioners or a meeting. And there's been a lot of proposals about actually selling the lodge right now. The real estate market is, and I think most everybody's aware, it's pretty hot. That building and that view is worth more right now than it's probably ever had in its lifetime. But unfortunately, we put a lot of money into just trying to maintain and keep it weather tight, but it really doesn't get very much use. We can't use it during the wintertime because during the wintertime, the pipes underneath the building, which is an open crawl space, would freeze. So we have very limited use of the building. It's also requiring a lot of maintenance. I think the next big project that would be upcoming for that building is, in fact, the roof. So we should probably talk about whether that's still a good asset of use to the village districts and its taxpayers. Would it be better served by selling that property, which has been done to other properties in the village district, and then taking that sum of money and utilizing it either for another asset similar to the lodge or to pay off some of our long-term debt? The problem that we have, and that's why the $10,000 is being asked for the surveying, is that lodge sits on a lot that also encompasses the garage, which is adjacent to it, which is called the old Cabana building. And that Cabana building right now houses the electronics for the communications tower that's beside it and the new tower that was erected. So those two buildings actually need to be separated. As a matter of fact, it's not legal to have two buildings on the same lot in Madison. Of course, that was built and that way long before zoning ever took place. So it would behoove us even just to separate those two buildings, and we can do so with the extra space we have on adjacent land to maintain the minimum acreage that each lot has. So that's the proposal right now with regards to the lodge, but it's going to take $10,000 to do that boundary line adjustment and in order to get it prepared for sale. And so that's what we're going to be asking the voters to vote on at the annual meeting itself. Okay, next slide. Article number 7. This is a leaf blower. Well, the district actually owns what's called a backpack leaf blower. You wear them on your back and you wave the wand around to blow leaves. And that has been very good as far as getting into some of the culverts that have some loose leaves in them and cleaning those out, as well as cleaning the garage out of the dirt and dust that comes in with the vehicles. This particular leaf blower is considerably larger. As a matter of fact, if anybody, I think it was last week, this leaf blower was actually rented by the district for 3 days. And anybody that may have seen it in operation was probably quite amazed at the amount of power that this has. The purpose of this leaf blower, actually the need, is a lot of our roads that have been redone recently have had some proper ditching put in on the sides with the use of what's called Class C riprap stone. It's a large 6-inch size broken stone that is used to slow the water down as it travels downhill and through the culverts and through the drainage system. Unfortunately, a lot of these stones also collect leaves, sand, and other debris such as sticks, and it's almost impossible to clear these ditches or clean them unless you get some sort of instrumentation to help with that. This leaf blower is powerful enough, and you can see the evidence after last week's renting of the machine itself. It is able to actually clean these ditches that now have the proper riprap Class C stone placed in the ditches. So that's the other advantage of this particular article. And is there one more?
No,
I'm sorry. I think this one's Kathy. Yep.
So I'm up next. All right. So I'll take one to the next 4 warrant articles. I will give you the quick overview of. What the village district would like to do is raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 to establish a waste tank maintenance capital reserve fund for the purpose of removal of hazardous waste from the DPW tight tank. The Board of Commissioners are agents to expend these funds. Funding for this appropriation will be raised by taxation. This is a result of a visit from the Department of Labor where they required that we install a sealed tank on the DPW garage area here on Route 113. Sorry, let me check that right off. And so any of the water that's used to rinse the trucks off or any of the liquids that accumulate on the floor of the garage all drain down through the floor and into this tight tank that was installed earlier this year based on a vote for the tight tank installation the year before. And periodically that tank will have to be pumped. So it's just a way to put some money aside. We don't know exactly when that's going to be. We don't have any history with how quickly that tank is going to fill based on the way that our DPW uses that garage. So by just having the $2,500 set aside, when it does come time to have a hazardous waste company come in and empty that tank, if it's $4,000 or $5,000, at least we've got the $2,500 also set aside to help offset that cost. The next slide. Paula?
I got it.
All right. So this warrant article number 9, to see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,000 to be deposited into the medical insurance capital reserve fund for the purpose of mitigating the impact of the health plan changes for unforeseen increases in our health care plan costs. Funding for this appropriation will be raised from the unassigned fund balance. This capital reserve fund had been created in the past for the district and was funded with $20,000. And maybe 4 or 5 years ago, those funds were taken out of the capital reserve fund and I believe just put back into the unassigned fund because they weren't using them for the purpose of this reason, which is for medical insurance. But with the increase in medical insurance costs and the fact that we do now offer the family plan, one employee is taking it, but the other is not. So if that second employee ever chooses to do so, or if we hire someone else that needs to have a family plan, we'll have $5,000 set aside to help offset that cost. Because you don't want to put it into the budget because you don't know if it's going to be needed, but if it is needed, you don't have it in the budget. So it's good to have the money set aside in the capital reserve fund specifically for that purpose. And again, the current balance there was $26.58, which was probably a couple of bucks that was left over when they took the money out of the fund, and it was just some interest that had been accumulating. All right, so this is Article 10, to see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be deposited into the Highway Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. Funding for this appropriation will be raised from the unassigned fund balance. So this is really what Paula was talking about, whether we fund these warrant articles with tax increases or with money that's been accumulated in the unassigned fund balance, and we need voter approval to take money from the unassigned balance to pay for some of these things. So the Highway Equipment Capital Reserve Fund is down to $106.42. We're asking to take $50,000 out of the unassigned fund balance, of which we're already going to be placing $25,400 into that unassigned fund from the sale of the Ford 550 truck. And, you know, we put in $50,000 a year for 2 or 3 years, and then, you know, as Kelly said, we might need a $300,000 truck 4 years from now. At least we'll have a substantial amount of money raised to help pay for that truck. And Article 11, to see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be deposited into the Equipment Repair Capital Reserve Fund. Funding for this appropriation will be raised from the unassigned fund balance. Again, the balance in that account is $1,732. 2 years we had, you know, catastrophic failures with the grader, and it was one fiasco after another, one failure after another. So that account got depleted rather quickly, and we were lucky that we had that money there so that we could pay to have that grader repaired and put back into service. So we're asking the voters to fund the equipment repair fund with $10,000, but using the unassigned fund balance to do that. Okay. And then I think, Jay, this is back to you.
Yep. So this is Article number 12, and this is to reclassify a section of Reinhardt Place. Used many times in this presentation. So there's a hill. There's 2 hills in Idlewice: Oak Hill, and then the other one where the major storage tank for our water system is Reinhardt Hill. The road up on Reinhardt Hill that goes up to the tank is called Reinhardt Place. And right now, that road is both Class 5, which means it gets maintained by the municipality. And then there's a section of it that's also Class 6, and that's basically the large loop that goes around the entire tank and through the woods and comes back out at another junction. So what is that the classification of that road, the Class 5, which allows our plow trucks and maintenance to maintain that road, ends at the furthest point of the driveway on the last house that is now, well, the last occupied house that's now up there, which is at number 5, Reinhardt Place. We've been plowing and maintaining that road well past this point, which is in fact illegal to do so. Class 6 means that the road exists on paper and it cannot be maintained, or that no municipal monies can be spent in maintaining, whether it be plowing, adding gravel, or grading, or ditching. But we've been doing so because we need to have access to the existing pump station that's been there for probably close to 45, 50 years. So I think the classification of this road was done in error. Now that we have a new $400,000 water tank and an accompanying pump house, we need to reclassify this road to get access to those new assets. And this particular article is asking that the 350 linear feet to a point just beyond the post gate for the new Reinhardt tank be reclassified as Class 5 so that we can actually drive our trucks there, plowing the road, maintaining the road, for the purpose of servicing our water system and our water system assets and infrastructure. So that's why we have this article there. The next article is a reclassification of another road called Adelboden Way. Again, basically the same reason. We've been beyond the reclassification of the Class 6 section. There's actually a house on this area, but the village district was either forgetful or negligent in asking that homeowner who built probably 20 years ago to sign a liability waiver. So we should have done so when the house was built. The DPW has been plowing past the classification point now, and all this does is move it from one boundary marker on this property owner's lot to the other side, so that his house is now included in a road that is actually Class 5. The DPW actually created a cul-de-sac well beyond the existing boundary line delineation, And so they've been using it to safely be able to turn their plow trucks around and drive out of that area in forward gear as opposed to backing out in reverse. So it's also a safety issue. So again, these two reclassifications, it's just more or less boilerplate paperwork, and allows us to legally drive our trucks on these sections of road so that they can turn those trucks completely around as opposed to having to back them out during plowing season. Okay, next.
That's me.
That's you.
Paula.
Okay, this is just the last page. We're almost there. Just summary of all the warrant articles and the funding for those. And what these basically do is show what, for each warrant article that requires approval for spending, where that comes from. So for taxation, we're proposing to raise $627,295 from the unassigned fund balance, $65,000, and from the water bill, $163,075. And at the bottom, we just have put down what we anticipate the impact on the tax rate if all taxation funded warrants are approved. So this is anticipated. We do not set the final tax rate. That's calculated by the DRA. But based on the current assessments, which everyone knows we were reassessed last year, the anticipated tax rate would be around $4.67 per thousand. So if you had a property assessed at $200,000, the Roadway portion of your taxes would be $934. And then the last thing I'd say about this is, as I said, that I mentioned earlier, that $30,000 that we were overtaxed in this year. If that's applied, that would potentially lower this by about 22 cents per thousand, if that's the decision the DRA makes. So this is how it affects it. The tax rate has changed quite a bit because the assessment had a really big impact on the property values in Edelweiss. In 2019, our tax rate was $664 per thousand. But based on the reassessment, the tax rate dropped. Right now, it's at $498 per thousand. So this is actually a decrease. 498, which was the last tax rate from last year, was based on the new assessment values. So we're proposing actually a decrease potentially in the tax rate per thousand. And the last thing, we want to thank everybody. It's been a long presentation. We want to answer all your questions, get your comments. If you want to correspond with the office, please do so. Call or email is probably even better if you have comments. The social media pages are not official VDOE sites, so you're of course welcome to comment, use Facebook info board next door Edelweiss, but they are not official sites, and the Board of Commissioners does not follow most of those pages, most of those sites, and we don't take that input officially for the district. So please share your comments with us via email, or you're welcome. We're having a meeting tomorrow morning, which you could call into and give a public comment at the end. We have a meeting next Thursday at 9 o'clock. So please, share your feedback if you don't do so tonight in the next week. And then the annual meeting is on May 22nd, which is a Saturday. Big change this year. We're having it on a Saturday morning. Voting will be from 8 to 10 at the Madison Elementary School. And then we'll take an hour break, and the deliberative session will begin at 11, and we'll be following any COVID protocols for social distancing and masking as set forth at that time.
All right. Does anybody on the call have any questions? If you're on the Teams, you can press that little icon up above that shows a smiley face with the raised hand, and Donna will turn the mute button off for you so you can speak and ask your questions. Anybody who's on by telephone, do we have anybody that's just on by telephone?
Yeah, we have.
Just telephone.
Yeah, we got 4 people on telephone, 2 people on camera.
Okay. So let's go to the, I guess Doug has a question. Do you want to unmute Doug?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Doug.
Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay. I have a couple of curiosity questions on the budget, line 25, the insurance. I was curious if the district has considered in the past adding a D&O insurance and maybe an umbrella to the liability.
Find my slide here. I think I have some numbers here.
Could you repeat the question, Doug, please?
Yeah, I'm wondering if the insurance budget is just for property and liability. Currently, I'm wondering if the commissioners have considered in the past D&O insurance and also to further protect the district, an umbrella, commercial umbrella policy.
Yeah, Doug, I believe we just got a bill for that Prescott and Melcher insurance, and that was insurance to cover our treasurer from absconding with the fund. So we do have, coverage for that officer.
That would be a fiduciary policy, probably.
Yeah. So we do have we do have that policy. I don't know if it was $248 a year to cover the treasurer, since she has access to all of our bank accounts. Okay. But we do not have anything separate for the officers or the commissioners.
Is there a auto policy or vehicle policy? I don't see that listed there.
Yeah, with Primex, because they're a municipality driven company, all of the that falls under that same line, that property liability insurance, that $39,100. That includes all of our vehicles as well.
Okay. Yep. Well, you might want to take a look at a commercial umbrella policy. It's short money, and it sits on top of all the other policies that you have.
Okay.
If, God forbid, somebody, DPW or somebody else in the district got killed, it can wind up with a pretty gigantic insurance liability, and that helps a lot to defray that, to cover that cost. Anyway, just food for thought. Second curiosity question is the new Rhine-Act tank. I'm just curious as to why that was funded through operations highway budget and not through the water budget. It's a water tank, right?
Well, Doug, that's a very good question. We went round and round about that a couple of years ago, and I think what the commissioners felt was a fairer way to do it was to put it in the operations budget because it was funded by property taxes. So that way, the property owners with the more expensive homes, potentially had the higher income, would be able to absorb that additional cost through the property taxes versus somebody who had one of the $200,000 homes in the district. So it was like at $250,000. If your house was more than that, you would pay more if we put it through the property taxes versus paying less if you were if it was being funded by the water budget. Everybody paid the exact same amount toward the water tank. So by putting in the property taxes, it got prorated based on the value of your home.
Yeah,
that's the right answer.
Yeah,
and we did go round and round about that at the meeting.
Yeah, there was a warrant article specifically funding it that way that was debated quite extensively at the last year's meeting or the year before. I can't even remember. And I think the piece was that it is infrastructure and it improves the value of our district over time.
Yeah, year before.
There's about 10 to 15 property owners. I don't know the exact number that have wells that are not on our water system that don't pay a water fee. But we felt that by improving the infrastructure of our water system, which is so important, it would increase the value of our property, all of our properties, long term. So that's why we did it that way. It was sort of a lot of issues involved in that decision.
Obviously, a flat fee versus proportional is a big decision. Yep. Another question, the line 51 in the budget, the tools and equipment, you were describing the work to correctly allocate expenses that were being put in with repairs and maintenance and supplies and get them down to tools and equipment, which is a great thing to do, proper accounting. But that number is actually lower. The resulting tools and equipment is actually lower projected for 2021 rather than 2020. Yeah. Are you expecting to continue that marshaling of expenses and getting them into that line where they correctly belong there? If so, that could be low.
No, it may be low.
Yeah,
and I think the last couple of years, our budgets were really tight. We had no wiggle room at all. And I think that this year, in addition to pulling some of the stuff out of the repairs and maintenance line item, our DPW was able to go out and acquire some things that they had been needing for the last couple of years. So I think there's been a little bump in procurement because they were working with, duct tape items and, held together by a wing and a prayer. So this year, because of some of the good things that happened in our budget, it gave them a little bit of wiggle room to go out and actually get some things on their wish list.
Mhm.
And so by leaving that amount at 3,000, we even talked to the DPW foreman and said, you kind of had a little bit of a windfall in 2020. So this coming year of 2021, rein in the spending a little bit. But there was a lot of things. Those guys, we had a shovel down here that was in 4 pieces. The wheelbarrows were broken. So there was a lot of things that they were working with extremely substandard equipment. So I think with 2020 panned out the way it did, it gave them a little bit of freedom to start replacing some of those items. And they did buy a chainsaw that was like $1,000. That's a long-term asset. So there were a couple of other things like that in that $9,000.
Okay.
The other thing, Doug, was we also got rid of the old Ford 550, which was in constant need of repair. We now have 2 trucks in our fleet that are just no older than 2 years. So we do not expect, those are still under warranty. We do not expect to have high repair costs on those. If there are repairs necessary, hopefully it's to the truck itself and we can get that covered under the warranty.
Right. I understand that as you were describing the repairs and maintenance situation with those changes, it's the tools and equipment that I was worried about. If you're pulling expenses out of repairs and maintenance properly to reallocate them to tools and equipment, 2021 budget, not the actual spending, but the budget is actually lower than 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
And that's one of the reasons we don't expect a lot of repairs on these new trucks.
That's not the repairs, Jay. That's stuff that's tools and equipment for the DPW. It's lawnmower, chainsaw, the weed whacker, the leaf blower. They bought that backpack leaf blower. It's those type of items. So I think that the DPW, 2 things were happening, Doug, simultaneous. One was, yes, we were pulling some of the expenses that were being allocated to the trucks that really should be general grounds equipment. So that was increasing that amount. And also the fact that the DPW department was able to go out and make some purchases that they've been withholding for the last couple of years. So kind of 2 things were going on there simultaneously. So I think Kelly feels really comfortable. No, we got a bunch of new stuff. We're good for next year. And they're going to make do with what they've got.
So you would expect that to begin to grow a little bit as time moves along and this equipment gets older, in other words.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
The other thing is we do manage each line item, but on the other hand, if we get to the point where Kelly needed some things, we also knew that he was way under on that gravel line, for example. So while this is our guide that we try to stick to, we kind of said, it's okay to spend more on this line item, even after the allocation, because we knew we were going to be under in some other areas, and then it would be a good year to sort of do these things that he needed. So
good. And jumping to the articles, one question on Article 6 for the lodge. Does the district plan to retain the Vista? That would be a shame to lose that.
Yes, it will. Yeah, the intention is to maintain the scenic vista in the boundary line adjustment.
Okay, perfect.
Does anybody else have any questions, do you think?
Anybody, can we jump over to the people on the phone? There's 4 people on the phone.
Just if anybody else has a question, then Doug, we can go back to you. So what else we have? Jen and Grayson, Terry, Sherry, Dorothy, anybody? Any questions on anything that we presented?
This is Jen. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I had a question for you regarding the sale of the truck, and I'm just curious, with the 25,400, how come that can't automatically go into the highway and truck equipment repairs?
Well, it's a great question because that's obviously what everyone would think. So the money that comes in which is called unanticipated funds, and this sale of a truck, sale of anything would be called unanticipated, has to go first into the unassigned fund balance. So now it's in hands, in your hands, And what we're asking in the warrant article to bring a raise $50,000 and seed that into the capital reserve fund for new equipment is doing exactly just that, asking to take that $25,400 plus another $24,600, add those two together, and then seed that capital reserve fund for the next new truck, which is anticipated to be in 2 years, and it's going to be the larger six-wheeled dump truck, and it's going to be $4,000. So we want to get some into that reserve fund so that the time when we actually have to purchase that truck, we're not raising the taxes to account for all $200,000. We'll only account for whatever is remaining to be spent to purchase that truck. So if we have $150,000 in the reserve fund, we'd only be raising an additional $50,000 to purchase the truck, and it'd be no loan. It's paid for in cash.
Yeah, Jen, we thought the same thing. We said, oh, we could just take it and apply it to the truck that we just bought, the $24,000, but we can't do that. That's not our money to make that decision with, as Jay said.
Now, I apologize because obviously I'm not viewing this, but looking at that warrant article for $50,000 to be raised, I don't remember you indicating on the warrant itself to include that you're going to add the $25,400 as part of that warrant. Did you?
It's not. It's a separate. The money goes into the unassigned fund, so the money goes in there automatically. We have no control over that, and we're saying of the unassigned fund, which Paula said should be close to $350. We're asking the voters to take 50 of it and put it in the capital reserve. And keeping in mind, kind of like an FYI, we did just put, $25,000 in there because of the truck that we sold. So it's not a one-to-one relationship. It's more of a, yes, we're asking for 50,000, but we're putting 25 in. Now that 25 that goes in could go for anything. That could go for, a road project or a water tank project or a water main project. But it's just sort of a.
I think one of the things that came up, a couple of years ago when we had our warrant article meeting in person was specificity was very important. And I think just saying per se or will do leads to potential questions as to whether it will actually occur. So to finite the warrant article, I think would be better and get later responses in the positive.
Well,
doing so.
The money has to go to the unassigned fund balance. It's not a per se. It's not something.
That's a state law.
It's already been put in there. The 25,000 is already sitting in our unassigned fund balance. We don't have. Nobody can tell us we can't do anything with that. It's already sitting there.
We understand that. What she's getting at is that you're trying to transfer it without saying you're transferring it. When you're saying you're trying to raise 50,000, but some of that money is coming from that. It needs to be separated and clear.
I think if you guys, if you don't have the presentation in front of you, I think it would help for you to look at the page on the unassigned fund balance and how that is funded. Okay. And then you'll see that basically we anticipate that right now we've got about 350 sitting in the unassigned fund balance. 25,000 of that came from the truck sale. We don't get to this, so that's sitting there. It's a fund. We don't say this goes into it and this comes out. It's all just sitting there. Now what we're saying is we want to take 50,000 of that and fund the highway equipment repair fund. That's all we're doing. Yeah,
it makes more sense.
So yeah. to take out
specifically what goes in and out. It just goes in and it's now there, and it doesn't matter where it came from. It's there.
Yeah,
okay. That's all.
That makes more sense. Thank you.
Okay.
And maybe we'll take that.
Originally, it's hard to differentiate when you don't see it, and I apologize. I didn't have internet access tonight.
No, that's totally fine. Yeah, it would.
That's fine.
I had one other question, if I may. Last year, you guys had mentioned, or I should say the commissioners, had put a warrant article out for repaving Idlewise Drive, and I didn't hear that during tonight's presentation. Is that something that was thought not needed?
Yeah, so there will be probably a warrant article, not this year, obviously, but next year for the repaving or reclaiming of Idlewise Drive. So that will all be ground up as well. That material will be put back into the base, and then a 2-inch course layer will be put over that entire length of road as well. That's for next year. This year, what we were able to do, last year, that warrant article was amended on the floor to $5,000 for the purpose of repairing or patching. Well, the roadhouse did not have to use that $5,000, but we encumbered those $5,000 worth of funds into this year so that if any potholes open up, we will have $5,000 in which to repair those potholes until we come to next year where we're going to basically and hope to reclaim the whole road with new pavement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else on the call or on the phone have any questions for the commissioners? Okay, hearing nothing, I'd like to make a motion then to adjourn the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Okay.
And again,
All
if
in
anybody has
favor, say aye. Yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
I just wanted to reiterate that because of the virtual nature of the meeting, that if people do have questions, please email the office. If you want to see a detail of any of those line items or an explanation of the warrant article, if you didn't understand why we're asking for certain things, then please, reach out to the office. Somebody will get back to you with an explanation or a definition or a rationalization for something that may not have made sense during this particular meeting.
Right.
Voice is a little choppy.
The commissioners still have the opportunity to modify or change or even eliminate any of these warrant articles or the budget based on your questions or concerns that will be sent into the office or the questions that you just read tonight. So please, if you have any questions, please send them into the office. We'd be happy to receive them.
And Doug, I think I reached out.
Okay, so the motion has been made to adjourn the meeting.
No, go ahead.
Been seconded by Kathy. All in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.